basically what I will show you today about configuration works fine if you have HyDraw 2019, 2020, and 2021. I have a beta version for 2022, and today we will see how easier it is with 2022 to configure the SQL connection. So let's start. So anything you see here will be working also if you have an older HyDraw CAD 2019 or 2020 in place. A quick description about our library structure in Access. So if I have a virtual machine just dedicated to this purpose, I have been using my SQL Server for well, actually for about a couple of years in my PC. But this is a brand new setup, so you will see from not from zero, because I already installed a SQL Express, but I'll explain a bit about that. First, let's start with the library in the form of Access. You will be probably already familiar with that. Let me open also a sketch environment. So Access library is basically divided into three main folders, and let me sketch here. So we have data, and we have subsystems, and we have symbols. Data is the most important part for us, which is including all the MDB files. So MDB files, and those are all the Access database that contain information for components that we have linked. But there are MDB files also in the subsystem, MDB files, and also in the symbols, because all the library structure that we have in our software is arranged into databases. So for instance, if I go inside my symbol library and go to the hydraulic symbols, I will find two folders. Menu data, there is an MDB file, and symbol is a lot of folders where we have all the DWG files and images for the symbols. This structure is applicable to all the symbol folders, like electrical symbol, same structure. Subsystems, same structure. Inside data, we have only MDB. So when we plan to use a SQL database, we need to be aware that in the SQL, we will have only these databases. So in our SQL, we will put only the database, while all the symbols may stay where they are. And in fact, today I will show you that my configuration will keep the symbol where they are. Simply, I will make a connection to a SQL server. Or you can put the files in a network share or in a Google Drive or in a Dropbox in order to have a faster replication of symbols locally and to work in a more efficient way. So, of course, we need to set up a SQL server where we need to put all these MDB files. So the first part of our procedure will be we set up a SQL server and we bring in MDB files, and then we connect HyDraw with this SQL server. We have the possibility to migrate your existing library. This I have made for several customers. Today we'll see how to import the standard SQL database that we provide with the SQL package. But if you wish to migrate your existing library into SQL, feel free to ask us. We have guidelines, and we can support you in doing the migration. So what we need, and today I'll show you how to set up a SQL Express. SQL Express. So the intent here is to show you how to set up HyDraw CAD in SQL in a local machine. A larger organization may have IT infrastructure, IT guys, and they already are very familiar with SQL Server. So my intent is really to make you aware that it is possible to install your SQL Express in your computer and work with a SQL library. The reason for doing that is because you may have incompatibility with your Office. You may have some problems with connection with Access driver. And if you recently faced the issues with connecting to the Access database, those were not due to VEST fault, but were due to Office Microsoft updates. So we find the SQL more reliable than Access, because Access is really tied to Office, and there are frequent incompatibilities according to which Office, Microsoft Office version you have in your PC. So I have already installed the MySQL Express. So let me show you where I found that, and a few screenshots for what I did. So basically, if I open a browser, I have in my preferred items. So if I open a browser, I will go to my preferred, and this is where I downloaded MySQL Express. So I installed MySQL Express 2019 in this new machine. And when you download, there are basically two possibilities you can do. So when you start installing, this is what happens. Let me show you a couple of screenshots. When you start installing, you have this is an Italian screenshot, but you will find it familiar with other languages also. If you use the standard, it will be okay, except something that I explain later. If you do the customized, it will be better because you will have some possibility to change the instance. So for instance, in my case, you have possibility to create several SQL Express instances in a machine. In my case, I didn't use the SQL Express name, but I choose the name HydroDB. So by going for a customized setup, I could change the name for my instance in order to be able to find easier the database in my machine. And then when you do the custom configuration, you already have the possibility to do a mixed mode. So in order to be able to connect to the SQL database, HydroCAD requires SQL users in the database. So by default, when you install with the default settings, you install SQL Express, it will get only Windows authentication. And if you don't have SQL authentication enabled, you will need later to enable it in the machine. So we need SQL Express, which I have installed. And after you install it, you will have this control panel. It is called Microsoft Management Console, that allows you to control and also to restart your service. So as you can see, this is my running SQL Server HydroDB. It's empty. It's just an instance of my SQL Express. And I get here just by installing what I can find in this link. Download and install. It takes about 20 minutes because it has a huge, big download, and then it does all the setup for you. In order to be able to look inside the SQL server, I need a software called SQL Management Studio. You can find it by just Googling SQL Management Studio. I have already installed it, so you can find it very easily, and I can run it. SQL Management Studio. Okay, while it is loading, then we will need a third piece in place. So we need SQL Express as the base SQL server. We need the SQL Management Studio in order to be able to connect to our SQL server. And for HyDraw, we will need a driver to connect to the SQL. So basically, Access is using the Access database is using what is called the Microsoft Database Engine. We can find into the control panel. Control panel programs. So if you look at your installed features, you will find that there is a Access database engine. This is installed automatically with the HydroCAD, and it provides you the engine to connect to an Access database. We need something similar for connecting to the SQL, which is called and you can find them in again in the internet, MSOLEDB SQL driver. So if you look for these drivers, but we can provide you a link. If you Google for that, you will be able to find the drivers that are needed by HyDraw to connect to the SQL server. And here you can find a 64-bit driver in the website. Okay, now SQL Management Studio has loaded. As you can see, it is starting. And either you use Windows authentication or SQL Server authentication. I already have SQL Server authentication, so I will log in directly with SQL Server authentication. And you put the username and the password. And then I will be able to connect to my. This is a very complete, somehow complicated software. We don't need everything. Although with this tool, it is possible to do lot of stuff in the database management. As you can see, on the left, we have several tables and there are no databases. So now I'm going to build a HyDraw CAD database in the system. If you have an existing HyDraw CAD library, what we tend to do is we try to convert those existing library into HyDraw. While in case you wanted to start Jumpstart with a SQL Server, we provide a package that you can ask us. It's Invest website. It's a SQL package that contains the software to generate the settings and also backup for the database in order to be able to work. So I already downloaded this. It's a light package. It's in my C drive. And this is my SQL package. It's made of 3 folders and some guidelines. So here you can find instruction how to migrate. But if you struggle, really, it's okay. You can get back to us, and we will be able to help with migration. What I need now are database files. So we provide the metric or imperial database. So I will be able to import these backup files. So basically, these backup files are what I had shown earlier, a SQL database that correspond to those databases that are in the Access environment. So the hydraulic generic data is the database for the hydraulic symbols library. So we will start with only these two, hydraulic generic data and HyDraw data. Later we can import all the other, but we will see that it is possible to start working just with these two. HyDraw data contains all the data structure for the components. Hydraulic generic data contains all the library structure for the hydraulic library. So let's get back to SQL Management Studio. We go to database and we want to right click restore database. And now it will ask what we want to do. We want to restore a device that is located in our, and we want to add the backup files that is in my C drive, Vest, HyDraw SQL Package. It's in the SQL database, EN, metric, and I download the HyDraw data. Okay. Now I can click OK. So the database name will be HyDraw data. You can rename it. So let me do that. I will name it webinar data. If you want to change your database name, it is possible. This one is very easy. If you want to change the other database, it's a bit more, you need then to do some other changes. So I don't recommend to do that, but it is doable if you want, because you want to keep all your database for HyDraw in a particular sorting in the database, then it's better you get some support from us. Webinar data, okay. And now library SQL Management Studio is restoring a database, and we see it, webinar data. Now I do the same, restore database, and I import the again from the same folder, EN metric, and I restore just the hydraulic generic data. The same then can be done for the other database. Okay, and this is done. There could be other options, but really it's not important to do anything else. So now I have my two databases, and HyDraw CAD is almost ready to be able to connect. I just needed to be able to really connect to prepare the configuration files. I will start with Library Manager. It's easier. Then we do the same for HyDraw CAD. So if I open Library Manager and go to the options, I can see that the library part is showing me the C drive for the symbol and also for the component. The objective here is to connect with the database. So I close the Library Manager, and in the SQL package, we have a software called HyDraw SQL Setting Generator. So we need to remember the name of the SQL Server instance. So it's called HyDraw DB, and also where it is located. In my environment, it's very simple. It's this same machine. So you will see that I can use some shortcuts. But if you are connecting to a different server, you need to type in the name of the server or the IP address of the server. So what I need to do is I need to run the HyDraw SQL Setting Generator. And I have this dialog. So basically here I need to put the server name. So the first part is the name of the machine where the server is running. My machine is the same I'm working on, so I will call it localhost. If it's not the same machine, you can put the name of the machine or the IP address of the machine. For me, it's localhost. It means go and look inside yourself. And the SQL name is HydrawDB. The username, you could create a new user, but I keep the system admin to keep it simple. If you're doing for your own, really there is no need to make too many complex stuff. The password, you must remember the one that you set when you created a SQL instance. Then we need to specify the database. So the database calls webinar data. Webinar data, and I paste the same also in the component data and geometry data. In addition, I want to specify where my symbols are. So I will go browse and go to my C drive, or can be a network share, fast, and my symbols are the HyDraw Library 2021. I want to be able to later change my configuration, so I check this. If you don't want, you keep unchecked, and the user will not be able to, on his own, change easily. And then you click OK. Now, this setting generator is connecting to the SQL server and is going to create setting files. Configuration file created. If it's working fine, it will really take a few seconds. Make sure that you type in properly. So when you are done with the settings, what happens is that the setting generator put two files inside HyDraw CAD and Library Manager. So we copy this config file, copy, and we replace this config file into the folder where we store the settings for the Library Manager in this case. The setting in my case is in the program data, West. So here we have the settings related to HyDraw CAD. If the user has no permission on this folder, C program data, then the setting will be in the user roaming folder. So the scenario can be either the settings are here, and in my case, they are here. So I will rename the previous config file. Let's call it config access. And I paste it here, paste. If you don't find settings in this folder, you must look into the C users, your username. There is a hidden folder called app data roaming. And there will be a West folder. And if the settings are not there, you will find a folder here for HyDraw Library Manager and HyDraw CAD 2021 with all the settings. But in this case, I am working with the program data folder. Let's try the Library Manager. So let me run HyDraw Library Manager. So now if I go to the settings, we will see that the magically HyDraw Library Manager is connecting to the SQL server. But the files are locally stored, and I can change also the position for the files. If I go to the components, then I can see that inside each folder I will be able to find all the symbols. and I will be able to link, create, import data in the database itself. What will not work, for instance, is the pneumatic electrical symbol will be empty because I have no database here. So let's fill the gap. So let's restore database, and let me import the pneumatic symbols. SQL package, database, metric, and I take just the pneumatic. Okay, and click OK. Now that my database is there, the pneumatic symbol will be able to work. We go to pneumatic, and they are there. I do the same very quickly for the electrical symbols. Device. Please remember, this is very important. If you don't have a good IT system infrastructure, you should remember to make backup of your database. So like now I'm doing a backup, I'm restoring backup. We can make backup from the database to a backup file so that it is easier to restore in the future. So I show you in a minute. So now I'm restoring also the electric symbols, which are here. And now they are available. In order to make a backup, you will right click on a database and you will run a task and backup. This is very important. Remember to backup because for Access it's easier. You copy everything zip and put wherever you want. No one will backup the SQL Server without on automatically. You will need to specify the rules for backup. So if you do on your own, remember every now and then to do a backup. Here you can define where you want to save your backup. So we can add a position. The position will be maybe in my vest folder, and I call it data BAK. Okay. Okay, and now SQL Management Studio will make a copy of the actual backup, actual database on a new folder. And in fact, I will be able to find it here. See, paste, and this is the backup of my database. We do the same for HyDraw CAD. So we checked that Library Manager is working fine with SQL. So we go back to the setting generator and take the config, and again do the replace in the program data folder. Best HyDraw CAD, and I rename it in config Access, just in order to later be able to get back to my Access easily. Config, I run HyDraw CAD. Now it will ask for the license. So I have a network license, and name IP address, I point to my physical machine, PM52MC. Apply, close. So up to HyDraw CAD 2021, there is, well, in this case, you will see a German localization of HyDraw CAD. Let's finish loading the library. If I go to the options, okay, so it was able to bring in the library structure. And if you see in the application settings, it's connecting to the database. Also, I can change these folders because I set that the user configurable yes. So the limitation here in up to HyDraw CAD 2021 is that you cannot connect to two libraries simultaneously, like for instance you can do with Access. With Access, it was supposed to connect with a local database or a corporate database. We changed in 2022, so I show you a preview of what will be in 2022. And the big advantage is that you will not need anymore this setting generator file. So what I did, which is applicable now, and so you run the setting generator, replace configuration files, will be changed in the HyDraw CAD 2022. And let me bring it here. Let me make a new. So you see the interface is very similar to HyDraw CAD 2021 and formerly. So let's go back to the options. It's on the other screen, sorry. And application settings. Now the interface is much easier. So you can switch between Access and SQL, and you have a local or corporate SQL database. So you will be able just to type in the server name, database name, password, and the symbol folders directly within the application, which is much better. And it will simplify a lot. Of course, in order to work, you will need to set up your library in the SQL environment, and which is doable with the steps that I suggested you. When you have the SQL working fine, you can also remove the access engine. So let's get back to the virtual machine. Let me close HyDraw CAD. And let me go to the control panel. It was already open. So I really can uninstall the access. So if you remove the access engine, in an access library environment, HyDraw CAD and HyDraw Library Manager will not be able to connect to the database. So in this case, if I open Library Manager, it will simply not give some errors because it is not able to connect. But in my case, I'm using SQL. So if I run the HyDraw Library Manager, it will simply work okay. So in some customer, I found incompatibility between 32-bit Office and 64-bit Access. Really, the easiest solution was go for a SQL environment and get rid of Access database engine. Be aware that every time you install the Library Manager and the HyDraw CAD, it will always install the Access database engine. So if you don't need the later, you must go into the programming features and remove them. I see a question regarding, so if there are speed differences using SQL versus Access. So on a local environment, if I use my library in my PC, there will be not much difference. But if I work on a network shared with many users or through VPN, there is no competition. SQL will be simply much better. So really, according to how you work, there may be different scenarios. You have Office incompatibility, so you go for SQL. You may have a speed problem, you go for SQL. The only advantage of Access is really that is slightly easier initially because you just files you copy and you are able to connect. But when you set up your SQL server, then there are only advantages in terms of performance, reliability here. And I believe also we are planning to prepare some packages to help us setting up the SQL server for Library Manager in the coming months. But again, if you want to try with the SQL server, you can ask, and we will be able to support you in the setup of the environment. So I hope this was informative.